Hello everyone, how are you doing? Today we will watch a short retelling of the movie A Perfect Getaway. The film begins with cutting scenes from the wedding of Cliff and Sydney Anderson. The couple has fun with family and friends, receives gifts and informs that immediately after the celebration they go on a honeymoon to Hawaii. Cliff and Sydney arrive on the island of Kauai, travel around the island by car and explore the surroundings from a helicopter. Then they decide to go hiking on the Kauai Trail. On the way to her, Cliff stops to bring a young couple, Cleo and Kale. Sydney does not approve of his idea, so the guy has to lie and say that they are going to another place. Traveling along the trail, the newlyweds get acquainted with the guy Nick and continue the journey together. Then they meet the tourist girls. They reported that the murder of the newlyweds took place on the neighboring island. According to the assumption of the police, the criminals fled to Kauai. Next, Nick plans to leave Cliff and Sydney, but they, noticing that those who arrived from the same neighboring island, Cleo and Kale, are moving in parallel with them, decide to change the route and go with the guy. Nick introduces them to his girlfriend Gina. Cliff tries to catch a mobile network and runs into Kale and Cleo. A conflict is brewing, but Nick appears, and it does not come to a collision. The Andersons, Nick and Gina, decide to continue the journey together. Cliff inspects his belongings and finds no passes. He notices Kale's backpack on the side, rummages through it and finds a business card of a surveillance officer. During the trip, Nick tells that he is a former military man who has been in hot spots. He shows a scar on the back of his head and explains that it is a trace from a mine fragment. He survived because he was taken to the hospital in time, where a titanium plate was inserted into his head. The guy says that now the metal detector frame always reacts to him, but thanks to this, he can carry his favorite combat knife with him, after which he demonstrates the weapon. The Andersons seem suspicious of Nick and Gina. They doubt whether it is worth continuing the journey with them, but then they decide anyway, because Kale and Cleo, who are somewhere nearby, frighten them more. The company is settling down for an overnight stay. Nick suggests Cliff go goat hunting to cook dinner. In the jungle, men discuss their suspicions about each other about the fact that each of them may be a murderer. Cliff then wonders if they really came hunting. Nick answers in the negative. From his explanations, it becomes known that two people were following them. Cliff says he's worried about the girls, but Nick replies that Gina will be able to stand up for herself, and for Sydney. Men are sent to track down the pursuers. Nick goes ahead, and Cliff discovers a bonfire, near which a young couple is visible. He runs into a man and finds out that it's a guy from the store where they bought groceries before traveling. He brought the passes that the Andersons had forgotten. While the men are wandering in the jungle, the girls are chatting in the camp. Sydney shares with Gina a description of her future life with Cliff, and then tells the story of how she met her first boyfriend Rocky. Cliff returns to the camp. Nick comes after him, who shot a goat. Gina demonstrates that she knows how to carve carcasses and explains that she once worked in a butcher shop. Late at night, the Andersons again discuss that their new acquaintances are very suspicious, but still do not dare to leave them. In the morning, a police helicopter circles over the company's camp. Over the loudspeaker, they are invited to go outside. After examining the tourists, the guards fly away and find Kale and Cleo a little further. After checking their belongings, they find evidence indicating that they committed a murder. The police arrest the couple. They are put into a helicopter, and it flies away. Then the couples come to a remote beach, where, besides them, there are many other tourists. Cliff rents 2 kayaks, and invites Nick to see the cave, which is located somewhere away from the beach. The men are sailing away. At this time, Gina takes the Andersons' camera and looks through the recordings in it. Suddenly her face changes. The girl rushes to the water and shouts to Nick to come back, but the guy does not hear her. The girl runs along the shore, hoping to get to the cave where the men went. In the camera on the wedding videos, the bride and groom turned out to be completely different people. Thanks to this, Gina realized that their companions are not at all who they pretend to be. Sydney approaches the camera and discovers that their identities have been revealed and gives chase. Meanwhile, Gina runs up to the rock and climbs up it. At this time, the men swim into the cave. Nick realizes that he was tricked and tries to pull out a knife, but Cliff pulls out a gun and shoots the guy. The real criminals turn out to be Sydney and Cliff. They are drug addicts who kill their victims and then assume their identities. A series of flashbacks demonstrates how Sydney and Rocky killed the real Andersons, and then took their belongings and, having significantly changed their appearance, impersonated them in order to hide Sahu. From further scenes, it becomes known that Rocky framed Cale and Cleo, first slipping evidence into their backpack, and then asked the guy in the jungle to inform the police that a couple with weapons was traveling around the island. After that, they were arrested. When Rocky shoots Nick, he falls into the water. Gina sees it from the cliff. Rocky shoots at her, but misses. Sydney appears, she attacks the girl and wounds her in the leg, but Gina manages to throw the criminal off the cliff into the water. Rocky climbs the cliff and sets off in pursuit of Gina, while Sydney sails back on the boat. In the cave, it turns out that Nick survived. The clue is that the bullet hit the titanium plate in his head. The guy gets out of the water and climbs up the cliff to help Gina. Gina runs into a bunch of guys along the way. The girl says that a killer is chasing her, but she does not believe her. Rocky appears, kills the guys and is about to shoot Gina, but Nick attacks him and seriously injures him, and then raises a gun and aims at him. At this time, a police helicopter picks up Sydney, who pretends to be a victim of criminals. The helicopter hovers over the clearing where the guys and Gina are. The policeman demands that Nick drop his weapon. The guy throws the gun away, but his hands raise it. Sydney is in the helicopter, informs the guards that Rocky is a real criminal who ruined her life, and the policeman kills him, saving Nick and Gina. At the end of the film, the wounded Gina and Nick fly away from the island by helicopter. The guy gives the girl a ring and makes an offer. That's how this movie ends. Thank you for watching. If you liked the retelling, put likes and subscribe. Soon there will be a lot of videos on the channel. See you later.